Last week, you learned about the reasons behind why collecting big data is so important and some of the contributing factors to why so many organizations are working hard to collect these amounts of data. But having the data by itself is pretty much meaningless without some type of analysis capability. Raw data is just raw data. But when you sort it, trim off the fat, and focus in on the pieces important to your needs, that is when it becomes really valuable. Big data analytics is the process of analyzing large data sets, really large data sets, to find the hidden patterns, the trends in market activity, the correlations that are not so obvious, individual and groups of customer preferences, and other forms of business information that can prove to be useful. Sometimes it's like digging in a mine trying to find the gold. The reality is that every piece of data that ends up in these sets is not valuable. But the analysis piece is the part that allows us to pull the valuable parts out. And these are the parts of data that can bring about new revenue opportunities, improve upon operations and customer service, and give an organization the edge they need to beat the competition. It really comes down to one major goal: to help organizations make more informed decisions. And in order to make those types of decisions, we need to analyze the data that we're sitting on. Most of the data that is collected is in an unstructured state. Think about a vacuum cleaner that sucks up everything in its path. If you open up the bag and examine the contents, you're going to find a lot of different particles all mixed together. Now think about digital data from that same perspective. If Google saves a copy of every search term every person uses, they're going to end up with, essentially, a large bag with a lot of different data particles all mixed together. And the larger the bag, the more variation in what it contains. One of the problems with this unstructured data is that it doesn't fit well within traditional database designs, and it is so diverse that we need to analyze and sort it into appropriate fields. But no one can manually sort this amount of data. We need software applications capable of looking for specific trends or even specific strings of information so that we can pull out the information we need. For example, Google may want to correlate all the times someone searches for a Corvette and compare that to the number of searches for a Prius. Or they may want to look for trends in the types of searches being conducted from specific regions of the world. These datasets can help them to determine the order of responses and even tailor responses to be different in different parts of the world. With billions of searches every day, the only way they could successfully analyze the data for these specific searches is to include some type of automated process. Companies were collecting data 50 years ago on a much smaller scale, and were using some basic rudimentary analytics that helped to make future decisions. Mostly, this wasn't much more than spreadsheets full of numbers that showed things like products that were sitting on the shelf for a long time, other products that sold quickly, and even price points that allowed for greater sales. A good business person in that era would spend hours scouring the data to determine how they could make greater profits down the road. This was, and still is, important because this analysis was a major key to achieving greater success. One could easily determine where costs could be cut and where productivity needed to be increased simply by looking at a lot of sales figures. The concept is basically the same today, but it is now on a much larger scale, and the decisions are made at a much faster pace. In some instances, analyzing big data can allow for decisions to be made in a single day and can bring about immediate implementation. The sooner decisions can be made about business transactions, the sooner a greater profit can be returned and a greater amount of long-term profit can be achieved. There are some specific areas that organizations typically like to target when running analytics. The first is cost reduction. Anytime a business can reduce the amount of money that it costs to conduct business, it is able to translate those savings into more profits. Analyzing data can provide a business the information they need to purchase needed materials at lower rates, to reduce the number of needed employees, to reduce the number of hours that factories are open, and to even reduce the number of hours a storefront is open. Perhaps analysis yields that no sales have been made after 7 p.m. for several weeks. This information could lead to closing the store at 7 p.m., which will save on employee and electricity costs. And that's a figure that can add up over time. Making new products or services available is another area where analytics comes in handy. A simple survey provided to all past customers can provide information about what they have a need or desire for that is not currently offered. And the data from such a survey is easy to take action on. Many online companies can even collect this type of data without a survey simply by monitoring for the types of things searched for by customers using the store's product search functions. This automates the collection, which is a form of cost reduction, and it provides the data needed to add products to the line. One other area where analytics shows its strength is in speeding up the decision-making process. Being able to reduce costs after analyzing trends for a few weeks can have a major impact compared to waiting for a much longer period to make the same decisions. And making newer products available in a shorter period of time means that those products can be sold much sooner, and a greater profit can also be realized much sooner. You can probably think of some other reasons on your own about why analytics is important in this field. Certainly, the few I already covered do not constitute a complete list, and the reality is that list is probably pretty long. But these few key areas stand out as some of the most profitable ways analytics can be used. And when we're talking about business operations, making money is the reason the company is in business. So any method to increase what is coming in or decrease what is going out is always going to be a priority. Of course, even with a large amount of data and some great software to help automate processes, an organization still needs to have a team of experienced analytics professionals who can provide the systems with the needed variables, create some consistency in the way the information is processed, run reports that allow management to make informed decisions, and keep everything running smoothly. In fact, where analytics tends to fall apart is when an organization doesn't have these types of quality employees. It's just as true in this field as it is in other fields. Highly capable and highly trained employees are what make processes like this a big success. Without them, data analytics becomes a headache. So businesses need the capability, they need the automation, and they need the people to make it all work. The need for analytics in a traditional business is pretty clear from the profit generation perspective. But what about other organizations? How are analytics important to organizations that aren't necessarily in business to turn a large profit? Take schools, for example. Schools exist to educate, and while they do need to have income in order to pay for faculty and facilities, the primary objective is to educate students. Schools that collect and analyze data can determine which classes are the most difficult based on the grades that are being posted, the types of classes that are the most popular, and the courses that no one seems to ever take. And even within the courses, we can analyze the grades on individual assignments or projects to see where the course needs to be updated or modified to keep the content current and the difficulty at an appropriate level. Hospitals are another type of organization that meticulously analyzes data so that they can provide a greater degree of health care to their patients. Tracking the number of people who come in with the same symptoms can point to a common problem in a city or a region. You have probably heard a doctor say that something was going around. The way they know this is because someone analyzed the data and found the trends. And pulling the data from hospitals around the nation can provide even greater health trends and even point to the outbreak of epidemics. So there's a variety of ways that we can collect data and a variety of important decisions and actions that can be taken as a direct result of data analytics. You should now have an appreciation for data analytics, and it should have a greater meaning for you since you now understand what it is and why it is so important. I would like to challenge you to think about areas in the organizations you work and where analytics can bring improvement. You can also apply analytics to your own home simply by monitoring the food you purchase and eat to determine what never seems to get used. There are a lot of ways analytics can come in handy, and when we are dealing with extremely large data sets, analytics can help us make major decisions in a relatively short amount of time. That translates into greater productivity and capabilities. This type of analysis we are talking about usually takes place within the data warehouse, which we will start to discuss during next week's lecture and assignments. I want to leave you with one final thought that sums up the importance of data analytics. In today's technological and interconnected business models, data analytics provides us the ability to streamline processes, increase revenue, and make our businesses more successful. Any organization not applying some form of data analytics is missing out on the opportunity to improve.